Audrey Deveault, who is the chairperson of the Dawson Students' Union at Cégep Dawson in Montreal. Born and raised in Montreal, Audrey became active in her Students' Union at age 17 and has participated in many campaigns, protests, and occupations during the student mobilizations. An outspoken voice on her campus for accessible education, Audrey brings a grassroots experience of debating with fellow students and mobilizing on a largely Anglophone campus in Montreal. She also sits on the national executive of the Canadian Federation of Students as the Quebec representative.
Hi everyone. So this evening I'm going to focus more on my personal experiences at Dawson College, the local I come from. But before I do that, I really wanted to stress something that Marianne talked a little bit about in her speech, and that is that a movement like that, any kind of social movement, doesn't happen overnight. And you shouldn't be discouraged if you start mobilizing and you don't see things happening right away. For example, she said it, but this strike, people have been preparing for it and mobilizing for 2 years. And even bigger than that, people have been mobilizing in the student movement for 50 years or 40, 50 years in Quebec. And now I'm not saying that if you want to bring a movement like that to your province, it's going to take you 40 years to accomplish. I'm just saying that it's important to understand that we build on past mistakes and on past successes that we had. And it's very ingrained in our culture in Quebec. And for example, something that I really like to use as an example is the example of my stepdad. And why my stepdad? Well, he's lived through 5 general strikes during his time in university. And so he's the perfect example of the education system in Quebec. And he was wearing the red square way before I was wearing it, way before I was born. So I really grew up with that, and we were talking about it at home. And it's just an example to show you that things stay with you, those things stay with you, and we grow up with that, and it's in our culture. And a culture can be built. And yeah, so I hope you remember that in the future, and that if you don't see concrete results right away, you'll keep mobilizing and keep pushing for it. So now a bit more about the local where I come from, Dawson. The reason why I wanted to talk about my school is because it's very similar to many schools in Ontario for various reasons. For example, it's an English school. We have 10,000 students attending, and it's in the wealthiest neighborhood in Montreal, which is one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the country, actually. And it's not that people don't agree with the cause necessarily, but it's sometimes more difficult to relate to the struggle if you don't have any problems with debt and if you don't have any problems with paying for your education. Also, the student union where I'm elected is a very young student union. We've been independent from the college for 7 years, and so we've just really started building that mobilization culture and yeah, talking about these issues. So we have a lot of work to do still. And so just to say that, you know, it's not everyone in Quebec who's on strike, it's not everyone who is super mobilized. Also, we still have things to work on. So a bit of what happened in Dawson for the strike vote. So in our constitution at the union, it says that it has to come from the students. So the students have to bring a petition with 5% of the students that signed it. And then the union, the executive of the student union has the obligation to organize the General Assembly. So that's really our only part in the process, is to book the room and make sure that it happens. And also create both committees, which is a yes and a no committee, for students to join and mobilize on the issue. So it's pretty straightforward. And I think that's a big mistake that we made. It was underestimating the power of those 2 committees. Because the strike wasn't created by student executives, you know, in their offices, or by students sitting behind their computers on Facebook. It was created by students in the schools, mobilizing and going to talk to students, debating with them, and passing out flyers. And so we really underestimated that power. And so we booked the biggest room we could get, which was that could accommodate 600 people. And we thought it was going to be fine. We always had a lot of trouble having a lot of people at our General Assembly, so we were completely okay with that room. It was fine. Well, after 2 hours of waiting in the room and checking people's ID, checking them in the room, there was 1,500 people inside of the room and 1,500 more waiting outside. So in total, 3,000 people showed up to our General Assembly. students of Dawson because I don't have anything to do with it. So if you remember at the beginning I said that we're 10,000 students, so 3,000 is it's over 30% of our membership, which is enormous. Even before the strike, maybe during the strike it was more common to have a lot of people joining the General Assembly because it was a historical movement, but before that it's not something that happens at a lot of schools, even more militant schools. And so I think that we can be really proud of that, just the fact that people cared enough to show up at the General Assembly and debate. And it's very different than a referendum, because a referendum is just, you write what you want on a piece of paper, and then you're done with it, as opposed to a General Assembly where you really have to engage with people. And so, unfortunately, we had to cancel that General Assembly because we couldn't get everyone in the room and go to a vote by referendum. And we ended up losing that referendum and not being on strike. Now I know that I'm spoiling the ending of the story, but it's definitely not the most important thing that happened. And we have made a lot of mistakes, and two major ones I think were, students were really pushing for a general and limited strike. When in the past we only had a 3-day strike in 2007 and a 1-day strike in November. And so I think it's something important to remember when you're trying to organize on your campus, that you really need to know the personality of the student body, if you will, and if they're ready for something like that, if they're well informed, if they're mobilized enough to be able to be ready for that, because it is scary sometimes, and it represents a lot of sacrifices, and also because of all the rumors of you're going to get your semester canceled, it could be scary to vote for a general and limited strike. And another reason why I think it failed is because we didn't end up having a General Assembly. And that's very important, because General Assemblies really helped making people feel like they were part of something and that they weren't alone. When you go in a room and you debate with people, you can be convinced after a while. You also, if your intention is to vote for the strike, but you don't really know if you're alone, it can be a bit intimidating. But once you get in a room where everyone's wearing a red square, then you have a lot of confidence in your movement, and you have the confidence that you're doing something right. And so that's important. But more than that, I think that this whole experience really went to show that everything that people said about our generation, that we were apathetic, lazy, and apolitical, well, it was really wrong, because people cared enough, they showed up to the General Assembly, and even if they weren't in favor of the strike, they took the time and found that it was important and it was for their future, and cared enough to debate about it. And that's really important. Now, something that might happen also at your campuses if you move on to mobilizing for a strike is a lot of fight back from the administration. And something that we experience a lot at Dawson too. And for example, during the strike, some administrators contacted the people from the No Committee, telling them that we were not following our constitution at the union, that this was an illegal vote, and that they should complain and try to basically not have the vote at all. And so fortunately, one of them was nice enough to show us the email, and we were really angry because they're not allowed to interfere in our politics, because we are an independent body. And also, the thing that was really funny is that they had the copy of our constitution that dated from 2007, which obviously wasn't the right one. And so we had to send them a cease and desist letter, and let me tell you, they stopped after that. But it's not necessarily the best environment, right? But it's something that you should expect, because obviously sometimes in schools, the administration is not there to work for the students, and it's not there to represent the students in front of the government, but rather to represent the government in your school, and they're defending every position that the government is saying, basically. And so that's pretty much it for the struggles at Dawson, and in the future, the challenges that we face are going to be to keep mobilizing, because if you stop, then the momentum goes down, and so we have to work on that, and work on the fact that so many people showed up at the General Assemblies, and so many people voted also in the referendum. About 4,000 voted in the referendum, so that was good too. And we're going to see also after in September or in August if the strike picks up again. and build on that, and maybe we'll be able to have another strike vote. And I hope that the next time we have a vote, we'll be able to say that we won this one. And that's really the message I want you to keep from tonight, is that if you mobilize for a strike and you don't succeed right away, you'll just say, nah, it's not that bad. We'll keep mobilizing, keep working, and the next time we'll win this vote. So, thank you.